Of
Good
course.
afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Tilley. With me today, we've got Brandy Brown. We're going to be presenting on time and effort for federal programs. We've recently combined the time and effort reporting, so we're not doing duplicative efforts on the adult ed and the Perkins side. So it's going to be one unified federal programs time and effort training today. There's going to be some information that is going to be adult ed CCR specific, and I'll denote that whenever we get there on the slide. We have scheduled about 90 minutes today. The presentation won't last 90 minutes, so we'll have ample time at the end of the slide deck for questions and answers. We do ask that you hold your questions until the end or put them in the chat and we can answer throughout the presentation, but we want to ensure that we do get through all of the slides today. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to announce before we jump into the content of the time and effort is the North Carolina Community College System Conference. It's going to be held October 14th through the 16th at the Raleigh Convention Center. We look forward to everyone's participation and attendance at this conference. The agenda for today, we've got 5 main areas that we're going to be covering. We'll go over the time and effort basics: who, what, why, where, when. We'll talk about those semi-annual submissions. We'll talk about monthly submissions, the documentation checklist, and a Moodle course overview. And then after this, we'll also have time for questions and answers and share about the office hours that are upcoming. To start us off, let's talk about the time and effort basics. So what is time and effort reporting? It shows how those individuals that are paid out of part or whole out of federal funds, shows how their salary and wages are charged to those grant awards. All entities, all community colleges, all community-based organizations that receive WIOA Title II funds or Perkins funding must keep documentation on site to support time and effort reporting that documents the employee's time in writing that reflects the actual time spent by the employee on activities if the federal program is being charged, not only the budgeted. So if you budget 20 hours for adult education and 20 hours for Perkins, and at the end of the month you actually only spent, or at the end of the week you only spent 10 hours on adult ed and 30 hours on Perkins, you need to reflect that actual time in the time and effort reporting documents. The submissions are going to be either monthly or semi-annually, and on future slides, we'll talk about which one is most appropriate for which individuals. And it needs to account for 100% of the employee's time for the period covered. So that includes both federal time and non-federal time. So if you are partially funded by Perkins, for example, and the other part you're working on something that's non-Perkins related, or adult ed and non-adult ed related, the time and effort documentation needs to reflect 100% of your time that's where you're employed at your organization. It needs to be signed by the employee themselves as well as their direct supervisor. This is an internal control that we've added to help satisfy some of the requirements within uniform guidance. So we will not need to require personnel activity reports. And that's probably something that the adult ed CCR staff were saying, whoo. We'll talk about that in just a little bit though. You also need to keep backup documentation on site at your college or your community-based organization, such as those timesheets and payroll records to support the time and effort report submitted to the system office. That's something that we'll look at as part of our monitoring efforts, so make sure that those are accessible and filed appropriately. All right, so who should submit time and effort? It's really, really simple. It needs to be prepared for all employees, not contractors. So at your organization, make sure that you know who is an employee and who's a contractor, whose salaries are paid in whole or in part, even $1 out of federal funds. You need to report time and effort. If you are a community-based organization that uses staff members' time as part of the match requirement for WIOA Title II, you also need to complete a time and effort report for those individuals for their salaries if they're being used to meet a match or cost share requirement. This includes part-time, full-time employees, adjunct faculty, those Perkins contacts that have extra duty contracts, or any of the federal stipends that are given to WIOA Title II that are considered salary expenses. So if It's simple as if your position is funded with federal funds in part or whole, you need to submit a monthly or semi-annual time and effort. Or if your salary or position is used to meet a match or cost share requirement, that's more for WIOA Title II. You also need to submit time and effort for those positions. All right, so when to submit time and effort reports, we're going to break down the two categories, the monthly and semi-annually. We'll start with semi-annual. It's probably the most straightforward. Any employee whose salary and wages are charged to a single cost objective. We're defining cost objective as funded fully by a single federal grant. May submit document and reports for time and effort through a semi-annual certification that's completed every 6 months. That needs to be submitted for the June to December or July to December time period by January 15th, and for the January through June time period on July 5th by July 15th. So if you are charging 100% of your time to a single cost objective, that could be a Perkins Leadership Grant, that could be a Perkins Basic Allocation Grant, it could be 231 for that WIOA Title II, it could be 225 or 243, but not a combination of any of those. It has to be a single federal grant in which 100% of your time is charged to. That's when you'll submit a semi-annual submission. For monthly submissions, any employee whose salary is charged to multiple cost objectives, so it's funded by multiple grants, federal grants, or institutional funds, they must document their time and effort through a monthly certification that's submitted by the 15th of each month. So if your position is partly funded by WIOA Title II 231 funds and a separate portion comes out of your institutional funds, you would need to submit a monthly time and effort report in that example. Or if your position was charged half Perkins and half adult ed, and in that example, you would also submit a monthly time and effort by the 15th of each month. It's really straightforward. We're not going to talk about varied schedules or multiple tasks. We've simplified it in a way that we will meet uniform guidance requirements by having it be the most simple way to figure out whether you need to submit a monthly time and effort or a semi-annual. So if you're funded out of multiple streams, you'll need to submit monthly. If you're funded out of a singular stream, you just can submit every 6 months. All right, so what must that time and effort report include? As I mentioned on the previous screen, it reflects the actual or the after the fact distribution of the actual activity of the employee. So again, if you were budgeted for 50% of your time for Perkins and 50% adult ed, and at the end of that month, you realize you actually spent 60% of your time on adult ed and 40 on Perkins, that needs to be reflected in that time and effort documentation. And again, it needs to account for the total activity, not just the federal grant portion. So if you're funded 60% through your federal grant and the other 40% you don't do anything with Perkins or adult ed, 100% of your time needs to be documented on that time and effort submission. I mentioned that it needs to be submitted monthly or semi-annually. That's pretty straightforward. It needs to be signed by the employee and the immediate supervisor, and this is going to be really key after the time and effort reporting period ends. So let's say that I need to submit a monthly time and effort report for myself. And let's say it's August and I've finished the last of my work on August 20th. The monthly time and effort reporting period for August goes until the 31st. So I need to wait until after August 31st to sign that document. And the same thing for the immediate supervisor. You have to wait until after that reporting period has ended to sign that. Another example of that would be if I'm a semi-annual, if 100% of my time is spent on Perkins activities, and I'm funded from one singular Perkins grant. So let's say I'm funded 100% by the basic allocation. I come to the year's end and December 25th rolls around and I'm going home on vacation for winter break. I can't sign my semi-annual time and effort report until after January 1st, until after that semi-annual reporting period ends. There are going to be possibly some scenarios where you have staff members who are supposed to submit either monthly or semi-annual. It doesn't matter in the example I'm about to share, but they leave for an extended period of time for whatever reason. They transitioned roles. They leave on May 13th. They need to wait until after that reporting period ends to sign that document. So if your institution allows electronic signatures, if you have an electronic signature policy, you can request an electronic signature from them, and that is fine with us as long as you have the policy in place that allows that. If your local signature policy requires that you submit a wet signature, you need to follow that local policy for signatures. If for some reason you're unable to get that employee to sign after the fact, say that there was a falling out for XYZ reason and they've booked it to Mexico for vacation and you can't get a hold of them, the immediate supervisor can sign on their behalf. That's not ideal. And you need to denote that that employee was unavailable. I'm the immediate supervisor that has firsthand knowledge of this individual's time, but that can be if you are unable to get their signatures. Again, best to have their signatures both from the employee and direct supervisor after that reporting period has ended. And again, it's based on that actual time spent. So it's not just based on that budgeted time that you may send to payroll. It's based on what actually happened after that month or 6 months ended. So that's some of the basics. We want to share some of the semi-annual and monthly forms to show you all what will be submitted. And I do see questions coming in. Brandy Brown is going to be sharing the semi-annual submission form. While she shares her screen, I'm going to stop sharing mine and I'll turn it over to you, Brandy, for the semi-annual.
Gonna unmute and all right. Can everybody see the screen here?
Yes, we see
Okay.
the federal programs webpage.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring you to where you can download the forms that that Dr. Tilley mentioned that we've updated. So under the federal programs and monitoring and compliance page, if you scroll down, we have added a section for time and effort for both the AFLA grant and the Perkins 5 grant. So they're both identical, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you some of the forms here. If you click on the monthly, they're going to download in your browser. All right. Get this little bar to leave. All right. So this is our this is going to work for both Title II and for Perkins. So we've done some filling in for you. You have a drop down here for all the organizations, providers, and CBOs are also included in here. We have a spot for your employees' names, last names, hours worked. This is a very familiar form to the Title II and side of things. So we've listed each grant here and the anticipated hours. And then Perkins also has theirs divided up into the basic grant and the leadership and then others. So as Dr. Tilley had mentioned previously, if you don't spend 100% of your time in one of these federal grants, you have to list the other hours that you were also working during that time period. If you scroll over a little bit, you'll see we have a spot for the employee signature and date, and then we have a spot for the signature of each employee and date. And that's a little change from the way that CCR was used to also. Down here at the bottom, we have the statements. We mentioned that the reporting is due the 15th of each month, and that might be an adjustment with Perkins. Definitely, this is a due date that CCR is used to doing on a monthly basis. We just mentioned again, like Dr. Tilley said, don't sign them before the reporting period. And follow your procedures for wet signatures at your colleges. So those policies should already be in place and we follow those. Dr. Tilley, is there anything you would like to add to this form?
Just one thing. So for the monthly form that you're sharing, you're going to see column X, I believe, is the percent actual monthly total. That needs to equal 100%. So if you've got your time split between WIO Title II, 231, and 225, and 243, say that you've got all three going on, your actual hours, when it's compared to the total hours worked in column D, we put a formula in there and it needs to total 100%, not 110 and not 90, but just 100 to make sure that reads for all monthly employees that are submitting on this. And that's all that I've got. Thank you, Brandy.
Okay. And then for the semi-annual form, it's a very straightforward. Give it a second. It's gonna want me to enable. You have the option here of also just going to the drop down and selecting your organization. And also, we have a statement here about your hours. And so you can pick the grants here in a drop down. Well, I say you can, and we had before, so I might have to look at that. But this should drop down and show you the different cost objective grants that Dr. Tilley had mentioned. So it would be 231 and 243, 225, and Perkins, Basic, and Leadership are all listed in that drop down. There's a place for the student name, the employee name and employee signatures and their position and dates. The dates here can also be moved, so this form is usable for both from July to January and then uh, or July to December and then January to June. Dr. Tilley, is there anything on this one?
There's not. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Then we also have the forms on the website, the job description. This one's a little different for CCR and Perkins. Perkins has already submitted theirs for the year. And Perkins and CCR will submit theirs usually when they do the time and effort. And so this form has changed a little bit since CCR. We took the calculator off of here. Um, so let's see, the drop downs, you can put your employee name in and the job title, the cost objectives are a drop down. So you can choose different, we tried to make sure we had all of the different combinations of list of duties because you could have some working on 225 and 231. And so we tried to cover those combinations there. We took the calculator out because the flexible schedule is not really as a factor as it has been in the past. Um, Dr. Tilley, is there anything else you want to mention about the job description?
So this only applies to WIO Title II funded positions. Perkins funded positions already submit. This is part of your local plan and budget at the beginning of each year. Um, if if an individual changes positions and a new individual comes into the job, a new job description form needs to be submitted and it'll be an update to that. If there are changes in the job description of an individual, even if they're paid out of the same bucket of monies, a new job description update should be submitted within that same year as well. So we want to use this and compare to we look at the job descriptions and make sure that they're allowable WIO Title II activities and also that they align to what was submitted and approved in the budget.
All right. So that's where you can always locate the forms is on the system and on our system office website. And then each college or each program is still going to continue submitting through the Moodle programs. So CCR will still continue with the uh, let me go ahead. I think I have it up here. Yep. So CCR is going to continue with their 26-27 Title II continuous desktop monitoring. Um, they have their monthly submission requests, and right above that is where they can get the job description. The new form is in here now. Then the new time and effort form, the new monthly form is also in there. And you can, throughout the year, if CCR needs to update their job description, there's also a submission spot for that. And then we have it broken down into the I need to get out of editing mode to help y'all with the view. Clicking on here, you'll see each of the different monthly submissions. And then they have their semi-annual here, the new form that we just talked about, which I will make sure that the drop down is working for the grant combinations there. We have their two different time of year submissions here. All right. And then for Perkins, have theirs already pulled up also. Their submissions are going to stay the same for the where the semi-annuals are. Let's see, hold on. So the first semi-annual for Perkins is due January 15th, and their link stays the same here. Patty and I discussed we will go in and put the form in so you have a quick access to be able to
But
download that.
hey, how's everything?
And
Oh, I'm fine. Just listening to this kind of an effort
so
thing.
we
I
will
was paying attention.
also, if we scroll down, it's coming soon. And I apologize before the I'd forgotten to make sure that there was monthly submissions in here for Perkins. So underneath the monitoring, will also in this split time and effort and equipment monitoring, there's going to be the monthly submissions, the same as CCR under here. Um, and we're going to be offering the time and effort office hours, and so we'll also answer questions in here once we get those up and going. And I think, Dr. Tilley, did we want to talk about the due dates for coming up in October?
Yes, I appreciate that. I was just responding to Jamie Isaac's question that answers that as well. So we understand that the budgets for adult ed haven't been approved at each Title II provider, so we are going to hold off on requiring the submission of time and effort forms for the monthly submissions until October 15th. If for some reason you don't have an approved budget by that date, we'll work with you on a case-by-case basis to extend that deadline. I very much hope for everyone that all budgets are approved by then, and that can be the deadline for when that time and effort form is due. The semi-annual you shouldn't run into an issue on that because that's not due until January. And then the job description form will tie with the same date as that first monthly submission due date. So those for July, August, and September, along with the job description form, should be submitted by October 15th. And there's one question from Nicole. You were talking about your July time and effort submission. I assumed that that was a monthly submission. If this was for last program year, follow the same thing, follow the old form. If that was a July submission for a monthly submission, then you would use the new one. We've got just a couple other items to cover in the slide deck. Let me share my screen again and we'll get the slide deck at least wrapped up. Okay, so we talked about the monthly, semi-annual, and then the job description forms, and it would help if I click the share button. Are you all able to see that? Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about that documentation checklist, things to keep in mind. If an employee is paid in whole or in part with federal funds, if ask yourself this, is the employee paid in whole or part with federal funds? Is the employee's position used to meet a match or cost share requirement? If the answer is yes to either question, then a time and effort submission is required. Is the employee completing a single cost objective? And we've defined this as a singular grant. So Perkins Leadership, Perkins Basic Grant, 231, 225, or 243 grant. If a single cost objective covers their 100% of their position, then a semi-annual submission may be utilized. If there's more than one cost objective, so say it's a combination of Perkins and WIOA Title II, or a combination of WIOA Title II, 231 and 225, or a combination of Perkins Leadership and the Perkins Basic Grant. If that's the case for any individual, there needs to be a monthly submission done. Just as a reminder, semi-annual submissions are due January 15th, and that covers time from July to the end of December. And then monthly submissions, as I mentioned, using the new form for July through September are going to be due October 15th. And if budgets are delayed, we'll work with you all on a case-by-case basis with that. That shouldn't affect any Perkins staff. So you all should submit your July through September monthly time and effort submissions by October 15th. So these are things to keep in mind as you are working on your time and effort. This helps us show our federal counterparts that we are following uniform guidance, that we're being good stewards of funds, and that we know where those funds are being spent. We have implemented those internal controls of signatures for the employee themselves, as well as their direct supervisor, to help show that we are taking reasonable assurances that those charges are accurate, allowable, and allocable. It needs to be incorporated into official records. This just means that you're submitting it through the Moodle portfolio or emailing it, if need be, on a case-by-case basis to someone at the system office. Again, it needs to reflect the total activity for which an employee is compensated, not just that federal portion. 100% of their position needs to be listed on that time and effort document, and it needs to encompass all activities. They need to comply with established accounting policies and practices, as well as that digital signature policies at each of your institutions. It's fine with us if it comes in electronically, but you need to have a written policy in place that allows that. And then it supports distribution among specific activities or cost objectives. So if you are split 50-50 or 50-25-25 between different cost objectives, it can be identified on those forms. Brandy, you shared about the adult education job description and showed the demo of that. Again, Perkins, this isn't going to be relevant for you because you have already submitted this. Adult ed CCR staff members, a job description for each employee needs to be submitted. And if there are any changes in the position, such as job description, or if there's a new person coming into that position, that needs to be updated when that happens within the same program year. All right, Brandy, you also already shared the Moodle course overview. There's one continuous monitoring course for adult education where all of the submissions are uploaded to. We've embedded that into the specific Perkins course, so you don't have a separate continuous monitoring course to submit to. Now we've got some time for questions and answers. Before we do that, I want to talk about time and effort office hours. If you are watching this recording and you have some follow-up questions, you can email myself or Brandy, and we'd be happy to have an immediate response to you. But we're also hosting two time and effort office hours. We've split this up by program. So the Perkins primary coordinators are going to be sending an invitation for time and effort office hours for September 4th from 11 a.m. to noon. Adult ed providers are going to be sent a separate time and effort office hour for September 22nd from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. If you can't make that one work and you want to attend the other, that's completely fine. Just reach out to myself or Brandy so we can add you to the invite of the respective time that does work for you. Here is our contact information, and I'm going to pause now if there are any questions that need to be addressed. And as far as one that I just see, are those staff who sign time and effort monthly required to maintain PARs? No. At this point, we are not requiring the personnel activity report because we are meeting the 6 requirements for time and effort. So we won't be requiring that. If you want to, by all means, please go ahead and do that. You're welcome to. only if our federal counterparts come in and say you're not meeting those 6 requirements within uniform guidance for time and effort, then they can require that the state implements a personnel activity report. We combed through all the requirements. We worked with the Bruman Group on their time and effort presentation to ensure that we are meeting those requirements. Pam asks, how do you handle leave time for monthly reporting? So if that leave time is being paid out, that needs to be added to the time and effort documentation. Jennifer asks, the new monthly time and effort form is 5 pages in landscape. Can we change the layout a bit? Yes. Yes, as long as that
Yeah.
information remains the same, the layout of that is fine. If you need to add more individuals to that monthly time and effort form, say that you were one of the larger colleges in adult ed, there could be 30 plus people that need a monthly time and effort submission. You're welcome to add rows along that. And the same is true if you only have one monthly submission, you can delete 2 through however many that are currently listed on there.
Yeah. And I know it won't fit printed either. It's really long. So if you need to adjust it, that's fine.
Kieran has asked, it sounds like the semi-annual submissions from July do not need to be redone, but we should use the new form for monthly reports and for the subsequent semi-annual forms. So if the July that you're talking about, Kieran, is from December of 26 to June of 26, that is correct, that you don't need to resubmit that for the previous program year. The previous time and effort procedures are going to be used for that submission. Going forward, starting in July, the monthly submissions as well as the semi-annual that's going to be due January of 27, that would use the revised form.
Thanks for that.
Absolutely. Pam, how do you determine which funding source the leave is attributed to? I think that would depend on how they're being paid out of. So if they're being paid out of leave for Perkins leadership or Perkins basic grant, you would denote it on that monthly form. If you're talking about a semi-annual, I'm going to follow up with you on that one. That's a little bit more specific, and I want to make sure to think through that before giving an answer on that. Tara asks, if a job is split between instructional and administrative duties, do they fill out the monthly time and effort form if paid out of 231 funds and state matching? Really great question, Tara. So speaking to that instructional and administrative costs, that's something that you will denote on the job description. However, if 231s fully funds that individual's position, then they only need to submit a semi-annual form. They don't need to do the monthly. We've structured that cost objective in such a way where we've grouped together all 231 activities or all 231 buckets, all 225 buckets. Same for the Perkins Basic Grant. We needed to separate out, however, the Perkins leadership into a separate cost objective funding source. And these are some really great questions. What we're going to do is gather the transcript from the text box from the chat and follow up with a question and answer document so you have access to these answers after the fact as well. And Pam, that's where your specific one about how do you determine which funding source the leave is attributed to if it is a semi-annual submission. We'll include that answer in there. I'm going to pause and ask if there are any other questions. Feel free to unmute yourself or add to the chat.
Michael, I have a question. This is Lisa Ann from Wake Tech Community
Hey,
College.
Lisa.
I am responsible for time and effort at our college, not for IFLA or any of the WIOA grants, except that we do document them and keep them on hand. Our policy is that if someone is completely working on IFLA or IELCE or corrections, we would use the PAR as part of our documentation. If someone is working on IFLA as well as another grant, such as pathway navigators, they have to complete our form. With this new shift, will we retain copies of these time and effort reports that we can keep on hand?
Let me make sure I'm understanding what you're asking, Lisa. You're asking if you can keep the time and effort monthly and or semi-annual, whichever is needed, after it's submitted on in your files. Is that
Correct.
accurate?
Correct.
Yes.
Because if we're audited, we want to make sure that we have
Yes.
documentation that it was
Absolutely.
done.
Absolutely. And it should be that is a best practice that should be done as well. As far as that personnel activity report, we don't require it. However, you all can continue that practice if it's something that you would like to do. It's just not required to be submitted as part of the federal program's time and effort submissions, though you can require that absolutely at Wake Tech.
Okay, thank you.
Jennifer has asked for a little bit of clarity. If a person has a varied schedule, but is paid out of 231, we were doing a monthly recording. Yep, we have done away with that varied schedule and the task portion that was used in previous iterations. Going forward, if they continue to be paid out of the same fund and have a varied schedule, I can remove them from the monthly report. So, assuming that that individual is paid 100% of their position is paid out of a singular 231 grant, that it's not an 80% 231 and 20 institutional or 80% 231 and 20% 225. They could be a semi-annual reporter. Any other questions? Okay, hearing none at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lee to end us out with some housekeeping items.
Yes, and that was actually one of the questions in the chat, and so I will be able to answer it at this moment. So, for those of you who are in the adult ed side of things, you are aware that the PD team, we would host all of our recordings and webinars on a website, used to be called NC Title II, that has sunset. And so we do have a YouTube channel that is serving as our temporary repository for all webinars and recordings. And so that is where you will be able to access today's webinar, including the PowerPoint and any materials that Dr. Tilley and Brandy decide to share. For example, like this Q&A form, all of that will be attached to the description of the YouTube video. So you can access all this, again, our YouTube channel. The link is here on the slide. You can also type NC Title II PD Archives into the search bar in YouTube, and it will pop up and show our channel. I think I can also quickly put this in the chat. And when I say quickly, I mean, give me a couple seconds. So here we go. So yeah, please, we highly, highly recommend to subscribe, whether you are adult ed or Perkins. Currently, most of the playlists are connected to adult education, but our Perkins team also has access to this YouTube channel, so they will probably make some of their information public as well. I'm just going to take over and share my screen, Dr. Tilley, just so I can show folks what I am talking about. But yes, hopefully you guys can see this. So when you navigate over to YouTube, whether you, again, type it in the chat or click on the link, this is what you should be seeing, which I think it's right now a blank screen. Here we go. I hope you guys are seeing that. So yeah, so this is our PD archives as it currently lives, and these are the playlists where you'll be able to access the recordings. So today, for example, that would be under the monitoring and compliance playlist. It generally takes Dan and I between 1 to 2 weeks maximum to process the recording and the materials and get it posted and live. So just something to keep in mind. It may take us a little bit of time, but we will work as quickly as we can to get this information live because we know it is very important. So yes, that is where you'll be able to access our materials moving forward. And any comments, questions, or concerns, feel free to type them into the chat. And it looks like, Dr. Tilley, you got some more while I was talking.
Thank you so much, Lee. And for those Perkin contacts, we're going to work with Perkin staff to get it on their separate YouTube site, but
So
I
it'll be
meant
the same. It'll be the
it will
same
be the same. Okay,
channel. It's just the Perkins team. They have some playlists that they have not made public yet.
gotcha.
But for example, this webinar, since it is combined, it was both adult ed and Perkins, we will have it up there because monitoring and compliance, that playlist is already live in public. But yeah, anything else that's Perkins specific, there will probably be a playlist on that YouTube channel that will say like Perkins, and that will become live at some point in the future.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So Nicole's question is specific to AFLA about the 231, whether it's federal or state match. The cost objectives that we're describing for the WIOA Title II 231 include both federal and state match funds. So they're just lumped together if that person is paid out of state matching funds, or if they're paid out of the federal 231 funds, that would still be one cost objective. So those aren't being split out between state match 231 and federal 231 at this time, for this cycle at least. Absolutely. Lee, was there anything else logistics wise to wrap us up?
I think that's it with regards to housekeeping, but if my description was very confusing, totally understand, and you guys can ask away.
Thanks so much.
Of course.
I was going to mention one thing about due dates and Moodle. The continuous Moodle that is set up for CCR has the due dates like for July's submission in August. We, like Dr. Tilley said, we're going to go with an August 15th due date. So do not worry if you are waiting until October 15th to get that in. When we're looking at the risk assessment stuff, nothing will be counted late if it's submitted in October.
And so Penny did ask for clarity purposes, which is good. That means I wasn't quite clear. Thank you, Penny, for asking that. Yes. So the slides are shared. They're going to be shared in the recording. So when you navigate to the YouTube channel and you go to that YouTube video, in the description of the video is where you'll be able to access the slides and any other materials that Dr. Tilley and Brandy would like to share from today's webinar.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time today. And yay, federal compliance. Have a great afternoon. And it looks like it's a little stormy outside, so stay dry.
Exactly. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon, and I'm sure we will be seeing you soon. Thanks, Dr. Tilley and Brandy. Bye.
Thank you.